Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on mental health practices every business can replicate for a healthy corporate culture. We are very excited to be partnering today with the Center for Addiction and Mental Health to bring to you this wonderful webinar on encouraging mental wellness in the workplace. So, our agenda for today, we are just going to do a very brief introduction of PACE and CAMH, and then we are going to talk a little bit about the CAMH Mental Health Playbook for Business Leaders, and then Shil will get into how PACE maintains a healthy corporate culture, and our Returning to the Office Playbook will also be shared, and we will definitely have a Q&A session right at the end of this entire webinar, so make sure you save your questions for Dr. Ferguson and Shil. So PACE has been in business for over 20 years now. We like to describe ourselves as an IT department for your small or medium-sized business. So we specialize specifically in proactive managed IT support, managed cybersecurity services, managed cloud services. We are also an ISO 9001-2015 certified company, and we're very proud to be a 5-year Great Place to Work organization. So if you are looking to access any of our previous webinars, you can do so at pacetechnical.com. They are all located in our media center and are really easy to find. Our next webinar, which we are currently planning for, is happening on Thursday, October 1st at 12 p.m. It's going to be all about the new Microsoft Teams features. So if you are heavy Teams users, for you and your team, you want to make sure you join in because we are going to cover all of those new features that were just launched this August and show you how we've been loving it and enjoying some of those neat stuff that they've come out with recently. So stay tuned for that. So I'm just going to quickly introduce our CEO, Shil Risman. He is a co-founder of PACE Technical. He has spoken at several different conferences about mental health, and he has been an avid supporter of CAMH with the One Brave Night campaign, where he basically sings and gets a bunch of people to also perform their musical talents while raising money for CAMH. He's also the organizer of the Carrie Risman Memorial Fund, and he's been doing just tons of work and advocacy in terms of mental health awareness and raising funds for CAMH, and just doing an amazing job at bringing awareness to, mental health issues and all of that. So today we're very excited. This has been a long time coming, our partnership with CAMH. So I'm so excited to introduce you all to our guest speaker today, Dr. Donna Ferguson, the psychologist at CAMH that will be definitely giving us a professional perspective during this webinar. She is a board certified clinical psychologist, and she provides assessment and treatment specifically for cognitive behavioral therapy in the areas of post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety disorders, and has worked with injured workers at CAMH. She also has clinical research interests in areas of specialty in concurrent disorders, anxiety disorders, and comorbid depressive disorder, as well as gambling pathology. She has published on problem gambling, and she's also published on post-traumatic stress disorder. So we're very happy to have her here with us today to have this discussion with Shil on mental health in the workplace. So CAMH, if you haven't really gotten to know about them before, they are Canada's largest mental health teaching hospital. And they are a leader in mental health advocacy. If you ever want to get involved or drive change and be a part of that, or just educate yourself, you should go to their website to join the movement. They have tons of information on mental health resources. And if you are a business leader or if you are just someone looking for more mental health resources, be sure to check them out on their website to see what they're up to and what they're getting involved with right now, and ways that you can help and show your support. So CAMH has recently come out with a brand new mental health playbook that is all about navigating the new normal. So it's definitely very much based on, the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's a playbook specifically made for business leaders. So it has tons of statistics about, mental health during this time, how it's impacted Canadians, disruption and things like that, and how people are really being affected by all of this. And it will definitely be able to give you lots of tips and strategies for workplace mental wellness during, and not just during, also after COVID-19 and your return to the workplace and what all of that will look like. So we will definitely be giving you a copy of this Navigating the New Normal playbook at the end of this webinar in our follow-up email, as well as the recording and our playbook that we'll go through later with Shale, and tons of other mental health resources that Dr. Ferguson has provided for us today. So I'm just going to pass it on over to Shale and Dr. Ferguson to take it away.
Really trying to look at ways to optimize the return to work process and being able to track, the progress in all of this. So that's really some of the main points in terms of the development of this document, and was hoping to support people as they're especially as they're moving people back to work from a mental health perspective.
And again, it was really, really an eye-opener, certainly the second one.
Yes.
And the fact that you guys could get that data so quickly,
I know,
it is astounding to me. But it makes me proud that we are, and certainly in Canada, we are really, really taking this part of it seriously.
I agree.
It's hard not to.
It's hard not to, and I think it really is important, to address some of the concerns people might have, especially in moving back to work. And there's a number of concerns that people might have. It's not just from a, how do you accommodate someone who might be dealing with mental health issues but while they're off or while they're working from home, but people who are moving back into the work environment in a physical space might be worrying about their physical health and safety,
right,
as the schools are open up, as the numbers, they look at the COVID numbers on a regular basis. What does that mean for me if I'm going back into an office? Are they going to keep me safe? Am I going to bring something home to my family? All of these things are concerns that, people would have on a regular, and this is beyond the sort of regular mental health piece as well.
Of course. So we're going to move on to, there we go. Well, we have the poll question. Fantastic. Now we're going to see if I can do this properly. Polling question 1. Are there any current strategies to promote your mental health, your mental wellness in your organization? So you should see this pop up on your screen.
Yes. Please
feel free to participate and get these questions in and answer. We see a lot of participation at this point to see where we are. We have about 30% voted. So we're going to, we have a lot of people coming in. This is great. I wonder if you're going to be surprised by this. We're going to see in a second. All right. It looks like we've slowed down a little bit. Oh, no. Okay. We'll leave it for a little while. All right. There we go. So these are the results that we have. Are there any current strategies to promote mental wellness at your organization? 31% say yes, absolutely.
Wow.
We have. So is that a good number, do you think? Or
it's not bad. Yeah. It's not bad. I'd love to see it higher, but.
Yeah, absolutely we would. Nope, we don't have any yet. At least that's honest. So that's about a quarter. That's about a quarter.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we do.
Yeah.
That's also honest.
Very.
And we want to start doing more. Obviously, that's 40% of the respondents say they're going to be doing more. How does that sit with you as far as what you already know about how people are dealing with this?
I think this is about accurate.
Okay.
I think where people are at. I think unless you are, it's top of mind and it's one of, the strategy that you had continuously been working on, then, what you don't want to do is scramble, right?
Sure.
You want to have, as sort of the pandemic was starting to roll out and the lockdown, already people should be thinking about, okay, what is this going to look like? What does this mean? It's hard because you're sort of chasing your tail with it. You're not sure where the pandemic's going to lead. No one, 6 months later,
right.
we weren't really sure we were going to be here. I don't think anybody predicted this.
True enough.
Right?
At the cusp of maybe even going into a second lockdown. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so people are kind of trying in real time to figure out, what do I do? How do I cope with this? So I can understand those numbers in that way, and that people are really trying to figure it out in real time. How do we prepare?
Right. But we're all flying by, speaking for a
Exactly.
business owner, we're flying by the seat of our pants. Everybody,
Exactly.
not just in mental health, which is obviously important, but in just trying to do business.
That's
And
right.
trying to figure out how we're going to keep everybody employed and how we're going to keep our clients, successful.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff that we've never really, we've obviously had to deal with it, but
Right.
it's thrown a real, wrench into the day-to-day of how we deal with it.
Exactly.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we have dealt with it in the past, how we have dealt with our culture in the past, and how we're trying to make that work in a COVID-19 environment. And I certainly welcome Dr. Ferguson to you jumping in if you have some input, and letting me know if we're on track or we're off track. This is what we're here to do. So I love going to Angela Arendts, who was the VP of the senior VP of Apple for retail. She's the one with the who came up with the Apple Store and the Genius Bar and all of those things. And she built the success of that organization on one thing. And she said, if you're going to employ people anyway, why not make them the differentiator? And they're not a commodity.
Right.
And pace has certainly been that's how Mike and I have really tried to build this company, is recognizing early on that if we took care of our teams properly and made them want to be in our environment and show them the importance of what we do, rather than just fixing people's computers,
Right.
it would result in excellent client experience, and it would result in expertise, which all humbleness, it has. So that was our go-to about leadership for this. Leadership is an active thing. It's not a passive thing. It's not handing out orders, and certainly that's in my experience. But it has now become a little bit more challenging, needless to say, when you're not face-to-face with everybody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that we talked about early on was accountability, and accountability is one of the more important ways for leaders to influence the culture that they are working in. And that is not just about, like I said, being a dictator and telling people how things are going to be because you know what's best for them. It's not only holding people accountable, but being accountable yourself for the things that you do. And I'll go a step further in this now. That's changed for us in COVID-19 is not just about mutual accountability, but it's about mutual support. We are not, it's one thing to be in the office and be able to see the people, the teams that are working together, and PACE has really built our environment on collaboration, as hundreds of other companies in Ontario and Canada, and we have lost that. It's gone now, right? Obviously, you have technology and you have Teams meetings and Zoom and blah 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 blah. It's all good. You get to see everybody's faces, but it's not the same as walking past somebody's desk.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to reinforce is mutual accountability and mutual support. We are responsible for looking out for each other mentally, with mental health. I certainly try and see what's happening and keep my fingers on the pulse, but it's way easier for the teams themselves to keep track of each other. So is that a responsible thing to do? Is that putting too much pressure on the team, do you think? Or is it something that I should be careful about?
I think it is responsible. I think you have to figure out a way that people can be accountable to one another. Sometimes it happens naturally. Sometimes you'll have cohorts in the workplace of people who are maybe you're working from home and they'll connect with one another. You know, for myself, I have a group of people that I connect. We connect once a week, and it's our sort of debrief, mental health, wellness,
That's
and
awesome.
it's great. And my manager has created a social hour every other week where the whole team can connect. And so this is another way that we can check in on each other. I think if we have sort of organized ways that we do it, it's more helpful than just having that one person check in on the other person, because that may or may not happen. But we're accountable if we have a meeting set up. You know, that is our time to
Absolutely.
check in.
Yeah,
Right?
and we're going to get to that certainly with PACE. We're going to get to that a little bit later on. We do talk about that.
Right.
But I think you're absolutely right. Obviously, it's all I guess what Mike and I were trying to enforce here is that we're responsible for each other, and
Definitely.
and that
Definitely.
just it's less lonely, I think, more than anything else, right?
I agree.
Basically, when we're talking about making sure that we're all working remotely, we have to make sure that we're explaining ourselves properly and that we're giving context to people. I mean, it's isolating. People are isolated sitting at home and doing their work, and it works out great for us as a company, because we do a lot of one-to-one over the phone and over the internet with our client base, which means that we don't necessarily have to be in the office.
Right.
It was quite easy for us. We moved ourselves online, within hours, and we moved 3,000 endpoints from our clients online within 48 hours after the lockdown was announced. So, this is something that we were prepared for. But it changes the way that I have to deal with my teams. They can't see things firsthand anymore, right? It's very difficult to do that. So it's a matter of good leadership, giving people context and explaining things maybe a little bit further, and giving people a why they are doing things, or
Yes.
why we are doing things. Just answering the why itself is a huge breath of relief, I think, for people in general. And because that's not necessarily something that leaders do. Is that they just, this is your job, do your
Right.
job. I know why, you don't need to know why.
Right.
But I found that as we explained this more to our teams as to why we were making certain decisions, we had people coming on board, on understanding way easier once they had context. So obviously communications is a big.
Yeah, I love that. And it's transparency as well. I like to look at it as transparency. It's that I'm letting you know what we're doing, so you're involved. I can engage you. This is
Right.
not something I'm doing at you. This is something you're doing with me.
Exactly. And that's it. And that's exactly what it is. It's context and transparency.
Yeah.
It makes a huge difference.
Definitely.
As far as innovation and risk taking, this is something we've always done, but it's become even more acute, let's say, during this time. We had to. This is the time that people can take risks. Your client base certainly is going to be more, because no one really knows what's going on. No one really knows what is going to happen. So it actually encourages innovation and risk taking, because there's less at risk.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So the clients are way more open
Yes.
to seeing what you can do, seeing how you're going to try and get them to what they need to do. And so we have really pushed this out to the client base, as well as making not to the employee base, basically with a no idea is a bad idea policy. And we've always
Right.
done that, but this is a matter of how can we make sure that clients are being better taken care of at home than they possibly were at the office.
That's perfect.
So we're definitely happy about that. This goes to speak to what you were talking about at as far as opening up to kind of a group support and making sure that we're doing involving everyone. We definitely have our culture around music Certainly I do, and my partner
Wow.
Mike does. So that's something that really is something that we have concentrated on. We have a social committee that we brought into place during COVID. That Mary Ellen and her team have been amazing as far as getting weekly get-togethers online for people,
That's
doing
great.
game nights and that kind of stuff. I've always had an all-staff meeting every Friday, like you had said, where your manager is bringing everybody together for
Mhm.
kind of a social thing. That's our meeting. Where all 30 of us get together and we can talk about what's happened that week. We can talk about how everyone's doing and, personal stuff and engaging each other.
Exactly.
I've really looked forward to that, and I really miss this team on Fridays. We're going to do that after this. So it's usually at 1:00. We'll do it at
You're looking
1:30.
forward to it.
But yeah, that's it, right? So and that's just that little picture of me that Mel likes to throw in,
That's awesome.
doing online concerts over COVID, which were like, it was for my mental health more than
Yeah,
anything, was to be able to play for people. And we had a lot of people tuning in on Facebook to watch it. So
that's
it's
great.
a matter of helping people, right? And
Yeah.
then this is Halloween on
Oh,
one of the
wow.
slides, and we had our Hawaiian shirt day. So this is when we were still at the office, but we've been
Right.
trying to do that virtually as well. And back along the lines of what you were saying as far as transparency, here's where it is. This is something for me as a business owner that was the breakthrough for me as far as leadership goes, and that was creating transparency. It's crucial for the employees to feel respected, valued, and
Right.
trusted. And it just gives you such an edge as
Yes,
far as establishing a relationship with the people who are working with you. If you're,
absolutely.
and I'd love to hear what you have to say about this, because I have found anyway that when I started being transparent about, like, not holding everything so close to the chest, when I started talking publicly about my brother's suicide, or
Mhm.
about other things that had been going on within and without the business, but more on a personal level, people started sharing with me more
Yeah.
and started sharing with each other more. And I know it sounds really airy-fairy, and frankly, I don't care, because it made a huge change to how we deal with things. So is that something that you think is important during
Oh,
COVID? Or?
I love that. I love that you're doing that, because I'm a proponent of, um, I work with a lot of first responders in particular, but just generally, a lot of the clients that I work with, when they're in their environments, their work culture environments, sometimes they don't always feel comfortable sharing. And that's something that always comes through. And so when I see environments where you encourage people to talk, you yourself might do a little bit of self-disclosure. You're opening up the door to people feeling comfortable to disclose, or to feel supported, or to be able to talk about something that they wouldn't normally talk about. Mental health, sometimes, because there's still a stigma around mental health in particular, people are scared. They're worried that people might think they're weak, or that they're crazy, or that they can't work, they're not normal. And I think that when you open up and you create a culture and a work environment that is comfortable and supportive, you'll have people who will feel comfortable and supported, and they will feel like, okay, this is a place that I can actually say, I'm not doing too well. I'm feeling a bit low. I need some support. I need some time. This is what I need, rather than hiding away or drinking or doing something else to cope. So I
That's
love that.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I'm glad that you said that, because that's what we're trying to do, obviously,
Right.
and we see that with the teams themselves. That if I, as a leader, or Mike as a leader, can have no issue saying, "Hey, I'm having a rough day,"
Right.
or you know what I mean, and make sure people know that it is way easier for them to do it. And we have seen a massive reduction since we've been starting to kind of promote this kind of transparency in days off,
Yes.
frankly, because, mental health, obviously huge issue, but if you can get it it can sometimes be a momentary thing,
Right.
and if you
Right.
can have people support you in the moment, which is what we're trying to do, suddenly you don't have to take the time off that needs to be taken off.
Yeah, and not
Right?
every, low mood is equivalent to major depressive disorder, right? So
Exactly.
you're right. So even if people have their dips, their fluctuations in mood, their ups and downs, their stress points, it doesn't mean that has to develop into something more serious. And so you're right. I think prevention is better than cure. If you can kind of, work with people, help to nip that in the bud, then, maybe that's all they need.
Well, and that's, I mean, obviously, that is incredibly important, that we're not just talking about people with severe mental health issues.
Exactly.
We're talking about the mental health, everyone's general mental health.
That's right.
That's already been exacerbated by this pandemic. And so if we can get to those moments before the bad stuff gets to those moments, right? That's, obviously, I think that an important thing.
That's key.
This is this book, Getting Naked. I'm not sure if you've ever heard about this.
No, I haven't.
It's a business book by Patrick Lencioni, who anyone who knows me knows that I'm a huge fan of this guy. I've read every one of his books. I make my staff read every one of his books. This is a book that basically talks about transparency and weakness as a selling tool, as a client interaction tool. Forget everything else. But for those of people who maybe have their head, it's harder for them to get their heads wrapped around, doing transparency because of the employees. Do and exercise transparency and vulnerability because it's good for your business. I won't get into too much description of this book. It takes about 3 hours to read. It's a parable, but it changed the way that I looked at transparency. If you admit your weaknesses, your errors, and your limitations to your staff and to your clients, you go further because they probably already know. In fact, I guarantee you they do. They certainly knew in my case when I started doing it. So that's a bit of an eye-opener. But this is a great book for business leaders who want to see what the value of transparency and vulnerability is above and beyond the mental health aspect.
Definitely.
We are, I'm the kind of guy I was raised, my mom, who I've based this entire thing as far as exponential appreciation on, is was raised us with a huge amount of positive reinforcement, a massive amount of positive reinforcement, which obviously, builds self-esteem and sometimes gets you to think, that you can't do anything wrong, which may not necessarily be the right thing at the end of the day. But whatever, it filled us all with a great deal of self-esteem. And my brother, who's a psychiatrist, has said often that she may have gone overboard and made us think that we were way better than we were. But that's it. Is that I don't think that there's, looking back on it and seeing what it means to ensure that you're pointing out what's going well with people at this time. It just goes so far in keeping spirits where they need to be.
Absolutely.
Again, it's an airy-fairy idea for a lot of business owners, but it works. And you're not, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dr. Ferguson.
I was just going to say, my mom did the same thing.
It makes sense.
She did the same thing. Even if you brought home a test that you didn't do well on, she would say, okay, but you know what, you still did this, and she encouraged you, and it wasn't like, well, what happened to your, the 80%? She was, and I almost said, I wonder if she should be pushing us a bit more instead of always being.
I was lucky in that my mom was like that, like your mom. My dad was the one was what happened to the 80%.
Same.
Okay,
Same.
there it is.
It is. So it balanced.
Should have been more balanced, yeah.
Yes.
But this is what we're talking about, right? It's if we can step up, and we're not talking about pouring it on so that it's sickening, but we're talking about making sure that people understand what it is they're doing right and how it affects the rest of the team.
Right.
And I don't think that you can do this wrong. It's sometimes even if you feel that you're going overboard with people, I would still do it a little bit because, you're probably not. It just seems that way to you.
Yeah.
Perhaps, the staff hasn't felt this in a long time, right?
And they may need it at that moment. That might be exactly what they need to feel that support.
Yep. And so that's it. We've been trying to do that. Certainly we have a piece of software called Crewhoo that we put into place about 2.5 years ago, which lets our team members give kudos to their colleagues by giving points that are worth prizes at the end. So they can accumulate those points, kudos. So these guys give points to each other all day long, and they have to, in order to give points, you have to describe what the person did and how they helped. And so you've just got this list of great things being said about each other, and it just
great.
goes so far to kind of see that how that affects morale during this
Absolutely.
terrible period. And if anyone wants to reach out to me about Crewwho, feel free. Shale at pacetechnical.com. I have no problem sending you that information. It's very easy to get in place. But that, it's obviously at our all staff meeting, the first half hour of our all staff meeting is just all talking about the wins that we've had that week. So, and along those lines, these are our weekly winners. Again, when we were in the office. So we have awards every week for customer experience and for the amount of trouble tickets that we can fill and for the amount of kudos that we get from clients. So we are so lucky. We have such an amazing staff that these guys have absolutely no issue getting up in front of the camera either and being recognized on Twitter and Facebook and whatever for their stuff. So it really is great.
You're creating such a great workplace and work culture, and I can see the morale with people beaming from ear to ear. So
I appreciate that. It's nice to know that it's working. Also, it's nice to get positive validation from a professional, I have to say as well. That also makes sense. Anyways, one of the last things we do, and we started doing during this, it was easy to do personal check-ins with people when we were all at the office together, because I could walk past a desk and sit down and have a chat with somebody. I can't do that now.
Yeah.
So, you know, what I try and do is at least get a couple of one-to-one discussions with people, with some of the staff and certainly with clients for a 5-minute period over Zoom or Teams to kind of check in one-to-one, hear how things are going, make sure that everything is fine or not fine, and make sure that people have the time that they need to deal with what they have and are given the resources that they need to. It definitely has gone a long way as far as me being a CEO, trying to keep touch with people. It's so much harder to do now, and it takes up time. But would you rather be dealing with people, you know, doing 30 one-to-one checks every? Like, I don't do 30 a week, you know, I do whatever I can. But would you rather be doing that or being blindsided by someone who's having mental health problems? Right? It's the proactive part of it is so important.
Absolutely.
So we're going to go on to the second polling question, which is, do you have a plan to support your employees as they return to the office? Obviously a big question now. It's obviously one of the big reasons that we did this. So please jump on and fill this on. Do you have a plan to support the employees as they return to your office? Or are they returning to your office? You know, how are you going to deal with it? Basically, it's more about, do you even have a plan? Mm-hmm. I think is, you know, the answer we're trying to do here. Lot of participation, a lot of participation. I love this.
That's great.
Yeah, it's people have a real interest in this, and there's a ton of honesty as well, right? So, which
I love, because you can't fix it if you don't admit to it, right?
And not everybody knows about it, and I think that's why we have such a great attendance here today. Right. Is that, you know, at the end of the day, we definitely need to do something about it, and people are being honest about it.
And we can all improve.
Absolutely. And you can see that in the results. So 30% say they have a plan, which I believe the 30% was the same number that we had for the first question last time.
I think before.
Yeah, somewhere in there. We don't have a plan right now, 15%. Yeah. We're working on it, 43%, which is fantastic. So people are still keeping a positive outlook on it.
That's great.
It's like, yeah, we don't have a plan, but we are really working on trying to figure out how to bring people back properly. Right. And we want tips to start our own plan. So 25% of the people that are out there have been are looking to get some more information on it, obviously. Sure. So that's good.
Yeah.
So we sent out a basic returning to the office checklist to our client base, and I think some prospective clients out there as well about 2 weeks ago in our newsletter. So I'm just going to touch on some of this stuff as far as the kind of stuff that we see important, and you know, certainly Dr. Ferguson, if you've got some follow-up on this, I'd love to hear it. Sure. So what we did certainly at PACE was we created a return to the office task force. This happened immediately after COVID started, just to kind of channel and organize ourselves to react to what the situations were. But we also wanted to be able to have a group of people who were going to be in charge of bringing people back to the office if we did. PACE is in a position that we're not right now. We are more than well aware to work from home. The government has basically said, if you can continue working from home, please do it. Let's keep the numbers down. So we're doing that. But if you need to return to the office, create a task force. Obviously, what we've talked about before, stay in touch, having open communication, establishing a reasonable and documented work from home policy, for sure, is something that is necessary. Check with the officials on healthcare screening recommendations, keeping your own policies reviewed and updated, making sure that people are doing what's right as far as health and safety practices within the office, wearing masks, keeping 6 feet apart. It can be grueling, but we do not, the last thing we want is to go back into lockdown. And
Yeah.
this is how everyone can, not, if we start really pushing it within the workplace and you start pushing it within your own workplace, as challenging and pain in the butt as it is to do, it will help us all in the long run.
Mhm.
And certainly encouraging the staff to ease back into the grind that they may experience when they return to the office. It's a different situation out there, certainly, for
Yeah.
working from home to working at the office. Do you have any comments on these, or do you want to?
I think these are great. I mean, I think we've already talked about it, but just really ensuring that there are mental health strategies and wellness programs in place
Right.
for people if they need them, checking in with them around that.
Right.
As well as, like you said before, the transparency, making sure that whatever you're doing as you're bringing people back in, or they're working from home, or they're establishing guidelines for working from home, that there's a lot of transparency and communication about what you're doing.
Absolutely, absolutely. We should probably add that in now that I'm thinking about it, because it's not being even addressed.
Sure.
So that's easy. Obviously, just the basic office stuff, ensuring the cleaning is being done, tenants are practicing effective social distancing, make sure that you've adjusted your schedules so that you can have the social distancing requirements that you need. For instance, we have 30 people in 8,000 square feet. We really can't, the way that we're set up is a collaborative environment. We really can't accommodate everybody 6 feet distance. So we have to adapt, and we have to change our scheduling if we're going to do that. Establishing new guidelines for group meetings and visitors in the office, communicating the steps that you have taken to ensure staff safety. Again, this goes back to transparency. And again, it goes back to context and making sure that people understand the why that we're doing everything. It just makes it easier on you, right? As a business owner. And obviously creating a reclosure plan just in case, as you, Dr. Ferguson, have already indicated, and certainly the government is saying that there's a very good possibility that we're going to go into a second lockdown at this point. So obviously that should be top of
definitely
top of list. All right, so we have the last polling question, which is, how have you thought about how you might troubleshoot certain problems or difficulties related to returning to the office? Have you given any thought to the mental health requirements that the staff is going to need as they come back in, specifically? The answer is probably yes in general, because you're on this this webinar, but you never know. And I'm speaking for myself as well, there's a lot of things that business owners need to be worried about right now that don't have to do with the staff. And sometimes those things go up to the top, and they, I'm not saying that they shouldn't. If you're struggling to stay alive, that's a whole other story.
Definitely. Right?
So, good, we got some great participation here. The results are, yes, of course, they've been thinking about it. So 68%, 70% almost of respondents say that they've thought about all the difficulties and how they're going to deal with this, and that they're anticipating difficulties. I think that's the important part.
Yes.
They don't have blinders on that everything's going to be okay.
Right.
Nope, and we thought about it. Certainly that's out there as well. And again, there's no wrong answer here. It's more about awareness that we're trying to ensure that everyone is definitely on board. Do these results surprise you at all, or?
I think they're good. I think it's probably pretty accurate. I think, on a whole, you'd like to believe that people are thinking about possible issues they might have. I mean, no one wants to have problems, but you want to be able to think ahead. And if we do, what are some things that we can put in place? What are some things that we can do to prevent things from getting worse or prevent things from happening in the first place, if at all possible?
And I thought that the CAMH document on for businesses that you released, certainly the second one, was just an amazing document on how to do just that. We're going to make sure that everybody who's on this webinar gets a copy of that. By the way, they're also going to get a copy of our Return to the Office checklist, so that you can use these. And feel free to pass both of those around to people you know. Like I said, it was invaluable to me as far as the CAMH document. So the final part of what we did as far as Return to the Office was just making sure the technology is working properly. Evaluate any of the new technology deployed during the crisis. Certainly Microsoft Teams. I'm not sure what CAMH uses to keep everybody together.
We have a few different platforms. I mean, we use WebEx primarily.
Yep.
We'll use OTN at times, especially with clients, patients. So those are the two main ones that we've been using.
Right, and those are great. OTN, I think, is a more secure one for medical.
That's for medical, right? Yeah. The WebEx we use across the board for meetings.
Across the board, and that's the same.
Yeah.
If for people who aren't familiar, Zoom is exactly the same as WebEx, or I mean, we'll have different features, obviously, but all of them are basically the same, and need to be looked at. Microsoft Teams certainly for us was a major thing, because we can essentially operate our office the exact same way that we operated it when we were in there with Teams. And we have a lot of videos in our media room as far as being able to see how to get Teams, Teams installed, which is very, very simple to do. You want to document a list of staff who use their personal computers to work from home. Audit your tech being used from home, cataloging items that were removed from the office. This is something obviously that is going to be very important to people trying to keep their inventory straight. We've seen that with some clients. And one thing that's really come to light with COVID was disaster recovery and business continuity. It's not just about preserving data. It's not just about having a flood in the office. It's about what happens when you can't go to the office.
Yeah.
So schedule your regular disaster recovery and business continuity testing. Get it done. Don't leave it scrambling. We saw way too many people out there coming to us afterwards saying, what do I do? Rather than being prepared for it. So have a company, have PACE or a company like us, obviously, come in to conduct a gap analysis and see where the issues are. And we can consult on that. And we can also hook you up with the right people to consult on the other possible things that you need to kind of look at as far as phone systems and mental health. We can hook you up with from CAMH who can talk to you about the mental health of your staff and how to ensure one-on-one how we can ensure that you're not dealing with any other issues. So along those lines, for this webinar, we have a free technology assessment. Check where your company stands with cybersecurity specifically, because with Zoom and with WebEx and with all those things, there comes a security issue that gets forgotten. Is that suddenly all the security that we set up for people when they were working with their networks at the office are completely different than when your entire company is working from home. Don't forget that. Check where the company stands with the cybersecurity, IT process and procedures, disaster planning and continuity, like I said. Just email offers@pacetechnical.com and we'll be able to send you the stuff that you need. Do you have any general questions about leadership and culture? This is something that I've prided myself on for the past 30 years. I don't even like saying 30 years because then this makes me sound. But anyways, you can reach out to me directly. I love it when people do. General questions about mental health, make sure that you visit camh.ca. This is a great site with a myriad of different resources out there. And just a one-stop shop as far as making sure that you're doing the right stuff. If you want more info about our services in general, obviously you can email sales@Pace Technical. And again, you're going to get both of the playbooks after this webinar. Dr. Ferguson, these are mental health resources that are certainly top of mind for personal and business. Do you want to talk a bit about these? Or
Yeah, I helped to put these together, in particular around COVID and mental health, but just in general, they're just, general, resources and sites that people can go to, you if they want any tips, if they want any sort of general mental health resources. CAMH, as you can see, is there. Anxiety Canada is there. The OPA, the Ontario Psychological Association, which is huge for us, is there. All of these websites have a lot of information, around mental health and how to cope and dealing with different things. Mind Over Mood, or Mind Your Mood online support, is great as well. There's a lot of different things here that, even from a COVID perspective, when people have concerns or worries, they can look to some of these resources.
Is there an acute or urgent care line that you suggest for people in general if they find someone in their organization is having an urgent matter, or someone that, I guess a hotline that people can call?
Yeah, I can put together some distress center resources if you'd like, and I'll send that to you as well.
That would be great.
That's not included here. Of course, if things get very serious, 911 is always the number to call. We guide people to their nearest hospital if they're in crisis and of any kind. But I can definitely put some distress crisis resource numbers together as well.
That would be great. We'll get those out to everyone as well,
sure.
Just in case they need it. And these are obviously this is the self-help book.
Yeah, Mind Over Mood. I love Mind Over Mood. That's a book that we share with a lot of our clients. I've actually met the author. She's great. And this is a book. This is mainly around cognitive behavioral therapy. And it's really just the basics. This is, I think this is Mom 2, which she calls it, Mind Over Mood 2. And again, a great resource really when looking at how, thoughts and behaviors and emotions work together, and how they can, how you can work with your moods and your thoughts to sort of change the way that you feel and behave. And, we have the workbook for depression, as well as, a couple of depression workbooks. That might be helpful.
Awesome. All right, so we have come to the end of just the basics as far as the webinar itself. What we can do here is I can stop sharing my screen. That makes it a little bit easier. And we can have a Q&A as far as any questions and stuff out there that you want to share, and talk to. If you have questions directly for Dr. Ferguson, please put them up there. I'm going to check. We already have 3 questions out there. Let's get to the first one, Dr. Ferguson. I don't know if you can't see them, but I'm going to read them out for you. We can address them. What can we do if we don't have a big budget for social events? That is an easy one to answer. You don't need a big budget for social events. There's a ton of free stuff out there that you can do. We had game playing. I know that there was something called Psych, I believe is from Ellen or whatever, that we ended up doing. And there's a ton of free resources out there. If you want to contact me about that, I can certainly send that out to you. Go ahead, Dr. Ferguson.
I was just going to say that, I know it's not the same in terms, but, our social hour, sometimes we actually have, showers for people, virtual showers, virtual birthday parties, virtual goodbye parties for people who have left. And it doesn't cost us it doesn't really cost us a thing. We can we get together, we connect, have fun. There are a lot of things you can do. You can just be creative.
Surprisingly inexpensive to get people to. There's not a lot of demands. If you can swing it, I would say, make an investment in it. We certainly make an investment in entertainment and social culture for PACE. So, and we haven't, had to do as much because we've obviously been at home and we haven't been able to get together. So we've refocused some of those funds into being able to do it socially as well, right? and doing things like we've given everybody a subsidy, a $250 subsidy in the office to improve their home office.
Wow.
So we've
That's
got
great.
yeah, well, it's important. People are going to be sitting there all day long, and I was looking at some of these guys and seeing what they're sitting on milk crates. Our director of service delivery was essentially sitting on the floor because his son took his desk for school. Yeah, that's crazy.
Wow.
Anyways, we'll keep moving on the questions, but we thought it was important to be able to do something like that.
Definitely.
What is the best way to communicate mental health resources with employees?
I think there's different ways you can actually share them through emails. You can share them, like you can actually talk about it in a meeting, have a special meeting to talk about mental health, and then you can say we can provide resources as well, and then provide them electronically to people. I think we can't be afraid to talk about it. I think you just want to be open about it. You want to be able to say, hey, how's everyone feeling? I think we really need to talk about mental health. I think we need to make sure that we're all okay. And if we're not, that we have some supports in place. And then you provide people with those supports. I think you just really want to be transparent about it and open up an environment where you can be and people will feel comfortable with that.
It goes back and speaks to transparency again. If you already operate in a transparent way, this is an easy thing.
It's easy. Yeah.
So again, one of the advantages of being able to do that. There's a question here from a dear friend of mine, Lisa. Hi, Lisa, who runs a salon. And she says, we're a salon, so are not dealing with remote work issues, but back to work issues, which is exactly what we were trying to talk about here. The staff are anxious, dealing with unique COVID-related client issues. And while we've been back since the end of June, staff are still feeling overwhelmed. I guess this is 2 months later. Not sure what else we can do aside from what we've done. An open door for management, obviously flexible with shortened shifts. Co-workers are very supportive, but still feeling that they're not doing enough. What do you suggest to Lisa about? Obviously, she's been doing the best that she can possibly do.
Yeah, it sounds like she's doing everything right.
Okay.
I think the only other thing is that if you feel like some people are still struggling, is to check in to see if there's something else that you can provide them with. I think there really needs to be a lot of investment in mental health supports for every organization, regardless. And if there are ways that you can point someone to those supports, if everything that you're doing preventatively is not working and they're still struggling, because people can struggle for a number of different reasons. And, you don't know. Sometimes they were struggling, like I said before, and then now this is the tip over the edge. And so you want to make sure they have what they need.
Do you suggest to her that maybe she does this a little bit less as a group and more as
more individually? I would be checking in individually, because some people don't want to share that with all of their colleagues.
Right.
So it might be just to check in with that person or people individually and say, we've been back now since June. How are you doing? Checking in.
Yeah.
If you're not doing okay, is there something that I can do to support? Is there more that you need?
I would 100% agree with you. That's been, for me, my one-on-one meetings with people, Lisa, has made a big difference. I know you've got a lot of people working there, and I know it's harder for you because you've got to, they got to stay on the floor. You can't necessarily pull them off the floor to be able, you got to still have to do business. But I found that one-on-one is going to make people a little more open as well. Certainly you can give that a try. Hopefully that helps. Let me know. I'm sure you will, but let me know how that works out for you. Someone named Maria has asked, living in a rural area has its challenges, especially around internet access, obviously. Living in communities that are isolated. Do we have any ideas on how to support individuals in these situations? Certainly this is something that both myself and Dr. Ferguson can answer in different ways. I can tell you technically that, obviously internet access is massive around here, around rural areas. And, one of the things you might want to consider is budgeting for improving staff's internet access. A lot of times it's just money. And if that's something that you can build into your budget while people are working away from home, you can figure it out. There is other options out there. You can go back to telephone, and all that stuff is also something that is. I
was just going to suggest, like, if internet, I would definitely beef up the internet if possible. But there's also the option of phone.
Sure.
You know, and sometimes the phone can actually be a break from, you know, what we call Zoom fatigue as well. Right? We spend a lot of time in front of the video and in front of the computer, and that can be quite draining for people. So sometimes interacting on the phone as well. I know it's not the same, but one way or the other, you can reach out and you can connect to people. There's no excuse for that.
Yeah, doing it by phone is you're still going to get the same result. It's nice to see someone's face, reaction or whatever, but you still, phone in a pinch needs to, you need to definitely do that. I hope that helped, Maria. Okay. Ooh, lots of questions here today. Alia, isn't this a bit risky considering confidentiality? If we want to open up communication and talk about our issues, how do we promote others to do the same willingly? Oh my, this is great, Dr. Ferguson. What a great question. How would you address this? Isn't it risky considering confidentiality?
Well, yes. I mean, confidentiality for the other person, of course, right? So if you're disclosing, obviously that's your confidentiality. You're encouraging people to disclose. People aren't always comfortable. I think you want to reach out and you want to support people, like we talked about, more one-on-one, especially when you're dealing maybe possibly with some mental health issues. But all you can do is reach out. If people don't want to disclose, they don't want to disclose, and you don't want to push them to do that. Some people are private and they don't want to talk about what's going on, and they don't have to technically, right? They can actually go to Occ Health. Like, I don't have to talk to my manager. I can go right to Occ Health and say, hey, I'm not doing well. And I really
just for the purpose of this, what's Occ Health, if you can just let
Occupational Health and Safety, right, which is where you would go. Usually organizations, might have, part of the HR, they would have a place that you can go if you need to be on disability, if you need to sort of take some time off work. And really that's where the confidentiality lies. So you can talk to someone in HR and Occ Health, and they can communicate with your manager in a very vague way. No one really needs to know specifically what's going on, if that's how private people are. Some people, just checking in with them, it still doesn't hurt to check in. You don't have to say, with a light, tell me exactly what's going on. You don't want to interrogate people because of confidentiality and because of privacy. But sometimes people do want to disclose, and it is private, but that's their privacy to disclose.
Right. So you're basically saying to Alia, it's like, okay, the confidentiality, the onus is put on disclosing, right? So correct. It's a matter of your responsibility as a business owner is to open up the conversation.
Right.
It's not if they don't want to, you have to be open to that as well.
Correct. Right. Correct. You just want to be able to say, look, whatever it is you're dealing with, you don't have to tell me if you don't want to tell me, but we do have supports in place. I can direct you to supports if you need that. And so that people can feel that they can have their privacy and their confidentiality. But for everybody, that's your privacy is you can share that if you want to. That's your confidentiality. I can breach my confidentiality by talking to you about something, and that's mine to disclose.
Right.
Right. But if you don't want to, then you want to be at least know that you've provided some support systems for people, even if they don't want to talk about it.
Perfect. Okay, I hope that helped you, Alia. How can I start talking to management about adding more activities that encourage mental health?
I think do you want to start it?
No, please go ahead.
No, I think this is where, again, if you have this kind of environment from top down, where it feels like there's transparency, then it really isn't a tough question to answer. It's just say, hey, that would be an approachable environment where you can go to your manager. I know in our environment, I can go to my manager. I'm part of the leadership team, but I also report to my manager as well. And I can go to her and I can say, hey, you know what? I think I've been hearing buzzing, or I need something for myself. I think this is, and she's open. And you want to be able to feel that your manager, your leader, or your supervisor is approachable so that you can have that conversation. And I think even if you feel, I'm not really sure, maybe, you still want to go and say, or if there's a supervisor or manager that you don't necessarily report to that can support you, if that's an option, if you're not completely comfortable with your direct report. But it'd be nice to be able to go to your manager and say, I'm just wondering, what do we have in place for mental health, and is there room for more to be put in place? I'm just wondering.
Sure, and I think that's a fantastic way of doing it. I've recommended to people in the past who have asked me that, and I don't work in have said to me, I don't work in an environment like you have. Obviously, that it's a little more rigid as far as management goes. How do I approach it? And basically I said, you know, send them a copy of this video
Right.
or the other cultural videos and let them come to their own conclusions.
Right.
You know, I think that sometimes people need a wake-up call.
Yeah.
Certainly you can forward them. Again, I'm going back to the CAMH business, mental health playbook that came out. You know, if you want to make sure that your manager has a copy of this, or even making sure the CEO has a copy of it, and saying that you've read it and that you found it to be incredibly helpful. It's not a negative response. This is what we need everybody to look at this.
It's a great idea. I think once they have their hands on that playbook, then when you broach this subject and you say, hey, I've read this, I hope you have too. I think it's a great resource. And I'm wondering what we're doing for our organization, or what more we can do.
And this is it. This is exactly what we're trying to do. So please feel free. There's no advantages to CAMH, financially, obviously, to forwarding this. They've put it together because that's what they do. So, get this booklet in people's hands, specifically the second version of it that talks about COVID. Get this booklet in people's hands because it makes a huge difference. Along the same lines, we have a question here that says, if you're scared to confront your employer about a toxic workspace, what should you do?
Wow, that's a challenging one.
Yeah, I think it goes along the lines of what we were addressing just a minute ago, is that if you're scared of your employer and there's a toxic workspace and you can't address it with your employer, that's a whole other problem.
Yeah.
I would, and certainly Dr. Ferguson, you can jump in here. I'm talking on a personal level of someone who's been in the workplace for 30 years. If that was something that I was dealing with, I would look for a different place to work.
I agree.
If
it's an option, right?
If it's an option.
Yeah. I agree. I think you want to be in a place, a work culture where you feel comfortable. If there is room for change, it's not just, if it's the whole employer, what does that mean? How large is it? How many leaders? How many supervisors? Is it your direct report, or is it other leaders as well? Because sometimes it's not the whole employer, right? Are there those that you can work with, and that will hopefully trickle down? Sort of shifting the system, shifting the work culture.
And
right?
I think that is something that's never occurred to me, and that is that's great input as far as just because, certainly there's an old adage in business that says, 90% of employee attrition comes from management issues, not issues from the business itself.
Right.
So if there is someone else besides the person that you report to that you trust, that you can go talk to, that is a massive, that's still going to get to where it needs to go.
Exactly.
And perhaps that person will now talk to your, rather than it's hierarchy thing.
Exactly.
Now it becomes a linear thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
So that makes a big difference. I'm surprised that never occurred to me before in all this time. I'm going to make a note of that as well.
So
I think
we're learning from each other, Shale.
We're learning. That's exactly what should be happening. And I believe that's the end of the questions. I don't see any other questions here that need to be answered. So, but again, if you have any, feel free to forward them to me at shale@pacetechnical.com. I will certainly make sure that Dr. Ferguson gets those questions. I don't presume to speak for you, Dr. Ferguson, but my guess is that if I had a question that I wanted to send you directly,
I would answer that and send it back to you.
Yeah,
for sure.
This is part of what we're trying to do, is trying to stay open and transparent.
This is a partnership. We're working together,
and we're all, and that's it as well. Anyway, thank you so much, Dr. Ferguson, for being on this with us.
Thank you.
I had a great time.
Me too.
We could probably sit here and talk all day.
I could. I feel like we could go on for another hour.
I think that's to the detriment of everyone on here, who's going to probably drop off because of that. But again, you really brought a great flavor to this and some insight that I didn't have either. And I'm sure that it was helpful to everybody who was on this. So thank you very much. Thanks to Mary Ellen, who is our marketing coordinator and has put together this great presentation and liaised between the two organizations to make this happen. It's such a great opportunity for all of us. And I say to the rest of you, thank you for coming out. Please watch the rest of our webinar series that's happening in the future. We have that great one on the new features from Microsoft Teams on October 1st. So get to the Media Center and enroll for that. This video will also be available for people to read, and we said that we would send out the playbook from CAMH as well as our return to office playbook and checklist for everyone out there. Thanks for coming, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks again.
Thank you.